Welcome into the lounge presented by DraftKings. I'm Garrett Downing, joined by Clifton Brown, and today we're so excited to introduce you to the new offensive coordinator of the Baltimore Ravens, Declan Doyle. Declan, congratulations and welcome to Baltimore.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
So what excites you about this opportunity to come here and join this team and join this staff?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things. Obviously, the organization is a historic organization that I've followed for a long time, just from afar. The personnel side, the front office is well respected throughout the league. And then, the ability to join Jesse and this staff and be able to kind of put together our spin on what the Baltimore Ravens are going to look like. And then the addition of, our players being here and just being really excited to work with those guys. Certainly a lot of talent here, and I can't really wait to get to work.
So I'm curious, what goes on behind the scenes during the coaching carousel process? Like when your phone rings and it's Jesse Minter or Eric DeCosta, whoever was that made the initial call, but when it's the Baltimore Ravens on the other end saying, hey, let's talk about this opportunity, like what were the first thoughts that went through your mind?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a two-way street. You're obviously weighing all the options as far as, I was in Chicago and felt really good about that situation. And yet at the same point in time, being able to come here and be able to install an offense from the ground level, be able to put together a staff, be able to call plays really for my first time and, join Jesse. I was certainly very excited about that opportunity. And then, you add in Lamar and our players, it's a surreal opportunity, and yet it's one that I feel very ready to do and I'm very excited about.
You mentioned the Bears. You guys had a fantastic season. You're the offensive coordinator there. How beneficial do you think that year, just last year, will be to you coming into this job this season?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly beneficial, to be a part of a program that kind of just had a year one where you're trying to implement the standards and the details of what we were asking, both as a team and as an offense. And it's really similar to what we're going to go through here this year. And so, going through the off season, going through, OTAs and training camp, it's really going to mirror a lot of what we just went through. Mm-hmm. And so that experience is going to be, really invaluable for me as we kind of work through this process.
You mentioned the play calling aspect. Obviously, Ben called the play last year, but everything we've heard and read, you were very involved with putting the game plan together. In your mind, what do you think is the biggest adjustment for you as being the guy who wasn't calling the plays on Sunday to what you will be this year?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that you're the last one to stamp anything. And so my role last year was really to support Ben, support the rest of the staff, make sure that I was given ideas. I was trying to prepare the plan as though, Ben may have had other things going on as the head coach. But the idea was that you were setting the table to where he could come in and most of the work was already, done. And then he could come in and he could stamp whatever he needed to stamp. The difference here is just being able to put your own spin on some of those things as we go through that process. This is really a collaborative thing with myself and our staff. And so we don't want it to feel like this isn't my offense. This isn't it. This is our offense. This is the 2026 Baltimore Ravens. This is what we want it to look like. And I'm certainly excited about, being the leader of that group and being able to kind of teach not only our players, but our coaches exactly what our expectations are for our offense and this season.
So Ben Johnson is known as, one of the best offensive minds in football. What do you take away from being his right-hand man for a year and working alongside him and seeing just the way that he operates and the way that he built an offense?
Yeah, I think the detail and the championship standard that was implemented was exactly what I would emulate. The detail, there was a commitment to it every single day as far as, we're not going to be vague about what we're going to ask our players to do. We're going to make sure that they understand what the expectations are, and then the championship standard is holding them and ourselves to that every single day. The standard you walk by is the standard you accept, and that becomes the new standard. And so not being afraid to be vocal, to make sure that we hold, our players, our coaches accountable, and what we do in April, May, June is going to carry us into November, and it's going to allow us to play, at a playoff caliber when it's playoff time and not have to change the way we behave. And so it's establishing, the standards that we expect. It's starting to become a player-led team where those guys know the standard, then they can uphold that for each other. And I think that's when you are at your best, is when, the players start to embody, what you're asking, and they're showing up every day and doing it.
That's great. So obviously a big thing is a question, you've heard this before, is going to be the age, right? 29 years old. And so that's always something, until you become too old, then it's like, wait, you're too old now, right? So like, that's a question that's going to come up. What is your view of that? Being a 29-year-old play caller, offensive coordinator, younger guy, like, what is your view of that whole conversation?
Yeah. So this is going to be my 11th year coaching. I was a student assistant at Iowa for 3 years. I was in New Orleans for 4. When I got to New Orleans, I was 22 years old. I was in Denver for 2 years as a position coach, and that was the first time I had run my room. I was an offensive coordinator in Chicago, and then to be here. But really, the first time I was ever older than everybody in my room was that second year in Denver. So really, my entire coaching experience has been that way, where I've been kind of the same age as the players. What I know about, through my experience, knowledge is power. And so if you can help a player, they really don't care where you come from. They don't care how old you are. If you can help them advance their career, if you can help them advance our team and our goals, they're willing to listen, and they're wide open to that. I view it as an advantage because it allows me to, Jesse talks about being a connector and being able to build relationships. I've found that it's allowed me, because I've grown up in the same world as some of these guys, to be able to connect with them maybe a little bit easier than it might be for somebody who's 20 years older than a player. And so I've never viewed it as a setback. I think that experience is what counts. And certainly as an offensive guy, the amount of game plans you've sat in, the amount of defenses you've seen, the amount of planning that's been done, the year that I was born really doesn't have any effect on that. And so it's actually been something that I've found as a benefit to me.
That's awesome. You mentioned the word connected, together. Like, that's something that we heard many times during Jesse's introductory press conference. I'm guessing in this process, as you went through the interview and even in the conversations you've had since joining the staff, that those have been things that have brought up. And it doesn't seem like it's just lip service. Like, it's not just a cliche that someone throws out. It's a real thing, and trying to build that as a coaching staff, as a team, holistically. Take me into whatever conversations or what's going on behind the scenes as you try to build that togetherness.
Yeah, I think it starts with relationships, and relationships are essentially, trust is built off communication and accountability to that communication. So an open line of communication, whether that's to our fellow coaches or the players. Accountability is, us saying something and then doing what we say. And that's how we're going to build trust, up and down the chain of command throughout the organization. It's a huge piece of, what we envision here. We want a connected team, a team that's going to play together, because teams that are close, they tend to perform better, down the stretch. Guys that are playing for each other, that their why is included in, their teammates in the locker room, the coaches they're playing for, and they're motivated in that way. And so it starts with language and how we talk. It starts with, the communication and opening that dialogue. And then, really that trust is going to be earned through time. It's not like I can call up Lamar and say, hey, I need you to trust me. We'll earn that over time, and it's really going to be a two-way street. He's got to earn my trust. I have to earn his trust. And that goes for every player that we have. And so it's going to be a huge piece of what we're going to build here. The relationships are always going to be, the engine that drives success in the NFL. It just always will be that way. And I'm certainly excited to start and work through and build those things with our team and our players.
Yeah, trust me, Declan, for someone my age, being 29 doesn't seem like a problem at all. So, yeah, I think you'll be just fine. What about the offense? You touched a little bit about you're not going to be vague about what the players expect or what you expect from the players. What does a Declan Doyle offense look like? It's definitely, obviously want to score a touchdown every time you get it, but what are the characteristics that you want to see from the offense?
Yeah, I think the non-negotiables are that, one, we're physical, and that starts up front, but that also is how we are outside. Our little guys have to be able to beat up their little guys and go after them, and that's really how you measure the physicality of an offense. Are your receivers willing to go in there and block and be physical and set up some of those other things where you can create explosive plays on the back end? The second thing I talked about was detail, but really that is on every given play, giving our players exactly like where their eyes need to start, what the expectation is of giving them a toolbox of how to problem solve. Because at the end of the day, I'm going to take 0 snaps next year. I'm not going to walk onto the field one time. They're the ones who have to solve problems. And so we need to be detailed in our teaching as far as what we're going to ask them within the concept, the specifics of how the spacing of the field works in the passing game, the specifics of how their jobs relate to each other in the run game, and then the same thing in protection, how we make sure that the quarterback can play from a clean pocket. Okay. And then the last thing is that we're going to hunt explosive plays. We're hunting plays that, 12 plus yard gains in the run game, 16 plus yard gains in the passing game. And everything we do is going to be built that way, where we're trying to create explosive plays. We're trying to obviously score as many points as we possibly can. And so physical detail and explosive is what we expect to see.
You mentioned Lamar, obviously a gifted quarterback. You would just work with another gifted quarterback, Caleb Williams. What are some of the things that you think having Lamar as the quarterback of this offense will allow you to do that maybe if you had another quarterback, you would not be able to do it?
Yeah, I think he's certainly talented in a number of ways. When you watch the tape, there's not really any throws that he can't make. He's very arm talented. I think there's a number of things that you watch that I think that he can get even better. I think there's even a higher ceiling to his game. You're looking at a guy who's been the MVP twice, and yet I still think that just like all of our guys, but I think he still has room to grow as well. And so, he's a very exciting player. Obviously, you see what he can do off schedule. He can throw off platform. What he can do with his legs is really special and as a ball carrier. But I think that any player, it takes, really being able to work with them hands-on, be able to watch him, figure out what he does best, and then be able to shape and build this offense around what those things are.
The off-schedule piece, I'm curious your perspective on that, because on one hand, you build the offense, you want it to run a certain way and very detailed, as you just talked about. Mm-hmm. But then we pull up Lamar's highlights, on our website, the highlight reel, some of the best plays that he's made are the off-schedule plays. Yeah. And so how do you balance wanting to run this kind of perfect offense while also keeping the door open for some of the things that he does best?
Yeah, I think there's the benefit of having a quarterback like that is the defense has to defend 2 plays on every play. And so there's the play that is called, there's the choreographed play that we come up with that we're trying to be the best in the world at getting number 1 open in the progression. And so that play is called, there's a certain, rhythm and a timing to that play. It's a set, choreographed routes, our protection, all those things. And yet when you have a quarterback that can create, if that play, it really allows him to be an eraser. And so if we make a game planning mistake, if they play a coverage that we're not expecting, if a receiver doesn't run the route quite the right way and he works through his progression, now the defense has to defend a second play. And so obviously we have to have a contingency plan as far as the spacing of our routes and how we fit into that. But it allows the quarterback to be able to create and erase and create big plays when a defense has to defend that as he, either flushes or starts to press the line of scrimmage.
Something you've said a couple of times is explosive plays, and mentioned that. Like I remember the quote last year that Ben Johnson had when he was asked about the tush push, when he was like, I don't like the tush push because I've never seen a tush push become an explosive play. I want explosive plays, mm-hmm. right? And so I'm just curious how you go about, I think everybody would probably say that, but it seems in talking with you that explosive plays is part of your offensive identity and what you want. And so how do you go about achieving that and making that kind of a staple of your offense?
Yeah, I think it starts with game planning and understanding that you're going to have somewhere between 65 and 70 bullets a game to be able to fire. And so you want to make sure as you're planning those things against the defense, like there are always plays where you look at and you're saying, hey, this is a breather play. We might expect to gain, 4 yards on this, or we might expect to gain less. We know it's not going to be a negative play, but we're not expecting this to go for a big play. And understanding that we have 65, bullets to shoot, we have to shoot live rounds. Like we don't shoot blanks. Everything we do is pointed, it's calculated, and it is designed to bend and stress the rules of the defense. And so it's really a relentless game plan process to make sure what we're putting on the sheet, what we're calling, what we're asking our players to do, one, it expresses, their ability. Zay Flowers is a really talented player. There's a lot of things that he can do. We need to ask him to do those things within the plan. And then it is, making sure that what we're going to ask from a structural standpoint fits, trying to create those explosive plays against a defense.
Have you decided if you're going to call plays from the sidelines or the booth?
I haven't yet. I'd like to do both. I kind of talked to Lamar about the same thing. I was just like, what would you rather have? He said he'd never had a coach call it from the field. I'd like to kind of experience both and work through it with the staff, because there's benefits and negatives to both. Obviously being on the field, you love being able to be around the players and you get a good feel for it. And, I've been in the booth last year in Chicago. I do think there's merit to being up there, and it's just a very calm decision-making environment. And so we'll kind of try both and figure out, what's more comfortable for myself and what's going to benefit us more as an offense.
I know some trick plays were a part of the Bears offense, or part of it, but it seems like you guys got value out of a lot of them. I'm just curious, is that something that you feel will carry over here, and kind of the nuances of when to call them, that kind of rhythm of, okay, is this a good time? Is it going to work? Just curious about that, because you guys were so successful at that.
Yeah, I think that a calling card of the offense is the chase of creativity, the chase of, being able to give our players advantageous, looks and calls that may be able to take advantage of defenses. And so in a lot of cases, those plays, while they look cool and obviously they're very different, those are very detailed out. We spend a lot of time working through the details of those. It's not like we just roll those out and on Sunday we call it and expect it to work. We feel really good about those plays called when we call them, and it's certainly going to be the same way here. We're going to be hunting, ways to stress the defense, and a lot of times that is, it can come in what would be a little more exotic or an exotic form of offense, and I absolutely see that as something that we need to take advantage of.
How do you go about coming up with plays? Like, where do you search for them? Is it NFL, college, high school? Like, is it just getting into the room on a whiteboard, drawing it up, and seeing how many different variations? What's your play process?
I think it starts with having a system of plays, kind of built over time. It's not a grab bag offense. Obviously, this offense has been pulled from a number of different places, and it will continue to evolve as we pull from our entire staff and things that guys have done that they've liked, that they feel really strongly about, that they feel strongly about here. We want to make sure we evaluate all those things, and we can include them in that process. But it starts with having an idea of kind of what you want to run, the style of offense you want to play, starting to rep those things in OTAs and training camp, figuring out what our guys do well, giving them different tasks, and then obviously during the week, you're watching the defense, you're trying to figure out their rules and how we can stress them. Sometimes those ideas are novel and they're creative and they haven't been run before. Other times, just through your experience, like I said, this is my 11th year doing this. Like the last 10 years, you've been paying attention, and there'll be things that come up that you're like, man, do you remember when we did this? And with some of the guys on the staff I have shared experience with, there are other guys that I've never worked with, and the expectation is really going to be that good ideas come from everywhere. We need to make sure that we're running sound plays. So you shoot holes in those, and you try to, you're trying to figure out what's going to make them not work. And then we reverse engineer it from there. Like, okay, if a pressure is going to mess this up, well, how do we avoid that? Or how do we put a player in position to be able to handle that so that we make this play as sound as possible? And so good ideas come from everywhere. Plays come from everywhere. You can be inspired by, other teams running something, a college team running something, or previous experience of things that I or we have done in the past.
They can come from anywhere, Cliff. So get on the chalkboard, man.
Start working, ideas, man. We'll take them. Whatever you got.
The running attack here, ours has been hugely successful in years past. Lamar, and quarterback who can run it. Derrick Henry, one of the greatest running backs of all time. You guys in Chicago last year ran the ball effectively. How big a piece is the run game, you think, in what you see for this offense? How important is it for you guys to be able to run the football effectively week after week?
Yeah, I think it's a huge piece, because obviously as you run the ball effectively, you force the defense to have to be able to play down safety and fit in these gaps, and you start to open up, some of these shots that you can take over the top of a defense. And so to me, it always kind of starts in the run game, your ability to move the ball, your ability to move the line of scrimmage, and force defenders to have to fit their primary gap immediately off the snap. It's got to be a huge piece of what we're going to do. We want the ability to morph. I'm not necessarily like, hey, we need to run the ball 50% and throw the ball 50%. We need to do whatever's best against this defense as much as possible. And so those ratios can change week to week. We want to be able to morph week to week as far as what we may look like on tape. But at the end of the day, we will need to be able to run the ball. We're going to be able to run the ball. And those things are going to have to be detailed out so that we put our players in position to have success.
How much do you think that the running attack is an important piece of getting in once you get into the playoffs, getting further, that, the later it gets in this season, that if you can run the football effectively, because obviously one of the goals here is to get the Ravens to win a Super Bowl. They've been able to get to the playoffs, but in recent years, getting beyond that has been more difficult. How much do you think is the running game can help you guys get over the top?
I think it's a huge piece, especially as you get later in the season, you start dealing with, the weather element, things where, are kind of outside of your control. But as you're in the passing game, those things may not be as effective just because of, wind or snow or rain or any of that stuff. The rushing attack has to be there all season. It's not like it just needs to show up in the playoffs or is important then. But it needs to be a piece that we can really hang our hat on when we're flying off the ball. We feel like there are staple plays that we can get back to anytime. And, it's something that obviously is going to be really important as we get into postseason play and beyond that.
You talked about your coaching career, and you worked under Sean Payton at a couple of different places in New Orleans and in Denver. Obviously, he's been one of the best coaches in the NFL over the course of his career and really innovative on the offensive side of the ball. How valuable has that experience been from working under Sean Payton, and what have you taken from that?
I think it's been extremely valuable. I watched a guy that operated at a really high level, and I worked with him for 5 years. We're talking about a guy that's going to have a gold jacket on him someday, and to be able to see him operate, all the positives and the negatives, every part of my experience with him was outstanding, because really you're learning, not only from an offensive mind, but from a head coach that has been successful in 2 different spots. I got to see him, we talked about the experience of getting to Denver and getting to Chicago in that first year and trying to rebuild something. We really went through the same thing in Denver when we got there. It was a program that hadn't had very much success in recent times. And so you were starting to flip that mindset and what went into that. It's something that, I pull from every day, just my experience with him and, my experience at Iowa and Chicago as well. But it's certainly been a huge piece of who I've become as a coach.
You mentioned earlier talking with Lamar in this process a little bit. Obviously, it's probably been limited just in the interview process or since being hired. But what have you taken from those conversations?
Yeah, it's been limited, but I would say this. I feel a guy that is hungry to learn, hungry to grow, very excited about the opportunity to work together, as I'm excited to work with him. A guy that knows that his ceiling still hasn't been reached yet, and that's a cool thing. That to be able to get a guy to play at the highest level that he's capable of, and him being open to that. And so every conversation's been really good. Thus far, I'm really excited to get him back here with the rest of our players and get to work.
I know that I've read that you were a baseball guy growing up, but I know you've been around football your whole life. Your father was a strength and conditioning coach.
Yep.
Just how much has football shaped you, and not only as a coach, but as a person?
Tremendously. I grew up around Iowa football really my whole childhood. We moved there when I was 3 years old, and I've really been around football my whole life. And so it's been a huge piece of my life, being able to be around teams, being around culture, watching how people interact together. Every guy that I've ever looked up to has been a coaching figure. And so those were all the people that I spent time around when I was a kid kind of growing up. Those were my parents' friends and things like that. And so it's been a huge piece of who I am and who I am as a coach.
That's great. Well, man, it's enjoyable to sit down and talk with you.
Yeah.
Really enjoy getting your perspective and look forward to working with you and seeing what you and the whole staff can do with this offense.
Awesome.
Yes, sir.
Thank you guys
so
for having me.
much.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Dan.
Awesome. Welcome back into the Lounge Podcast. We are coming to you from the SeatGeek studio. We want to mention our partners at DraftKings Sportsbook. They are an official sports betting partner of the Baltimore Ravens. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. So big thanks to Declan for joining us.
Yes.
Just enjoy the conversation with him. You can see why the Ravens were interested in bringing him here to Baltimore. Obviously, has a vision, has a clear identity of what he wants from an offense. Super smart. You can tell that just in talking with him. And I'm excited to see what he does with this group.
No question. I mean, I can certainly picture him killing a job interview. His answers are precise, well thought out, clear. And yeah, I was just visualizing him talking to Lamar in his helmet, calling plays, their conversations together. I think it's going to be exciting for Lamar to work with Declan and vice versa. With Lamar's ability as a player and the stage as he is at his career where he has experience, and yet, as Declan said, yeah, as good as he's been winning 2 MVPs, he still doesn't think he's reached his ceiling. If Declan can help Lamar exceed where he's already been, that should also help the Ravens get where they want to go.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And I also liked a couple things that stood out in hearing from him. One, physical. I think when you see, a young new age coordinator, you think of passing game, you think of trick plays, and you think of the pizzazz.
Right.
But at its core, you need to be able to be a team that can move people off the ball, that can establish the run, and that opens up so many other things. And that is clearly an instrumental piece of what he wants this offense to be. And it's a good point about Chicago. The Bears were great at running the football last year.
They were.
And so that's an element that is definitely going to be part of this offense. And the other part, too, is he talked about morphing the offense. He's not going to be so rigid in exactly what they run. He's going to have the plays off of plays, have a system, and they're going to be able to morph from game to game, series to series, half to half, and that is going to be part of their identity.
Right. Physicality on offense is something that people probably don't think about as much as they should. I mean, everybody wants to be a physical defensive team, but being physical on offense cures a lot of things, particularly if you have a back like Derrick Henry. And then once you establish that, then that makes everything else easier. And I think that's kind of his philosophy. And if the Ravens can do that, be a physical offensive team, throwing Derrick Henry at you, week after week, and then late in the season into the playoffs, where the weather can get lousy and you may not be able to do some of the things through the passing game that you want to, that you always have that hat to hang on. And so the tools are here for the Ravens to be an elite offensive team. They were in 2020, 2024, regressed some last year. That's what they want to get back to, the 2024 offense and beyond that. And Declan, I think, sees with Lamar, Zay, Derek, and so many other pieces, if they're a physical offense, their offense will roll.
Yeah, I also loved his answer on the age question. That's going to come up, as always. He'll be answering questions about that all year, just because that's part of the conversation, and it stands out. It's a headline. But I think that his answer was great, and I agree with him. I think that in some ways it could be an advantage, and there's a connection there. And so I don't think being 29 years old will be a detriment to him at all, as you said.
No, I don't. And, young coaches have had plenty of success recently. I mean, Mike McDonald's still a young coach. He did pretty well this past year. Yeah, Sean McVay, he's still pretty young. And when he was younger, won a Super Bowl. So, yeah, that to me is kind of where the league is trending. Now, you don't have to be young. You don't have to be old. You have to be good. And so I think that he has enough experience, Declan, to be a good, if not even better than good, offensive coordinator. Everyone has to start sometime. Your first year, no matter how old or young you are, has to be your first year at some point. So, yes, this will be his first year as a play caller, but I think he's ready for the job. He also has coaches around him who can help him, and he always says, as Jesse Minter has said since he first got the job, it's not just going to be about one person. It's a collaborative thing. So he's got people to lean on. He's got a talented quarterback running his offense. Yeah, I don't think the 29-year-old age is going to be a factor at all in whether he succeeds or fails.
Yeah, so I'm excited about him, even more excited after the conversation
Absolutely.
today. So as always, you can email us at thelounge@ravens.nfl.net. If you have not subscribed, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel to make sure that you're getting all the exclusive content that we're bringing your way. Thank you so much for watching and listening. We'll be back with you again soon.